So now we have the audio ready. Now we are ready to publish. So we want to know where we should be actually hosting the MP3 files, because now the MP3 file is actually on my computer. I'm ready, but nobody can actually listen to it. And we need the RSS feed, right, to make the podcast. And like I said, if you want to use iTunes or other ways, the cover art is something that we need to do as well. That is displayed on the MP3 players while you are listening to that podcast. But we look at these topics next. So there are like basically two ways of hosting your files. One is to choose like hosting services that host your file. There are a couple of them. I'm listening then on the first thing. There's the Libsyn, Castmate, Podomatic. I've heard the Libsyn. There are a lot of users using that. I haven't used any of these. There are a couple of things that they offer for free on a couple of these, and most of them are, of course, they are little cost to actually use that. One thing that I'm going to look more into deeply in this year is the SoundCloud. If you're not familiar with that server, SoundCloud is the place you can, if you are like a new artist and want to record something, you can put it in a SoundCloud. It's an easy way to share your music over there, or well, you could actually record anything to there. And now they have this beta thing that they actually can have RSS feed from your SoundCloud account. So you could use that as where you could actually put your podcast in. That would be very interesting to actually use. There are some problems right now with iTunes and SoundCloud, but they are saying that the problem is actually in iTunes, not in SoundCloud, and that should be fixed in a soon time. So that would be easiest way to actually put your podcast in SoundCloud, because they have the cool widget that you can actually put your SoundCloud in, like audio, and embed that to your page. And if you can get the RSS feed straight from that, that's nice. And of course, these services, they give some basic statistics. You can't have very good statistics when people actually download the file, because we can just say, well, it has been downloaded this and this many times, or we could use cookies or IP addresses to say if that was the same person downloading, or how many unique downloads we have. But we don't know if they are listening to that podcast. We just know that they are downloading that podcast. The other way to doing that, let's hope the slide changes, yes, is to host by yourself, and well, basically adding the file into somewhere server that you actually already have. And if you are hosting some kind of blog and you use like WordPress, I think that's the easiest way to do it yourself. For WordPress, there are numerous podcast plugins, so it's easy to put the right information about that one episode, and you just make a normal kind of blog post, but you can add audio, MP3 audio file into that, and you can just give like a basic information about that. That generates the RSS feed automatically, and you're ready to go. And of course, you can have the basic statistics in there also, so you can know how many times the one podcast was actually downloaded. So then, we have the file, it's on the cloud, or we are hosting it by ourselves. Maybe the server is actually on the cloud, even though we are using WordPress, but we have the files ready, then we still need the cover art. So what is actually a cover art? Well, you can see on the thumbnails that is like little image that's took from iTunes, you can see these small thumbnails, and those are actually the cover arts. It's like your podcast album cover. If you're making like a record, you have album cover. So that's like your podcast album cover. And actually, if you want to list your podcast into iTunes, you have to have the album cover somewhere. And it's always, like I said before, you can stand from the crowd, like you can see these small thumbnails, and you can just briefly, by looking at it, make some kind of idea what the podcast is or what they are doing. So pay attention when you're doing the cover art as well, because they can be cool. So use that. So what is a cover art? It's a JPEG or a PNG format image, and iTunes right now says that the minimal size, and you can see it's a huge image actually, the minimum size of that image is 4000 times 4000, the square box, or maximum of 2048 times 2048 pixels. And why it's so large? Well, of course, if you are just looking at that image on the right side, or if you're using mobile phones, the size is very small. But if you're using iPad, maybe an Apple TV, then and listening to that podcast, then the image is actually larger. So that's why they say that the minimum size is the 1400. And of course, when you're making that image, it should be somewhere on the internet that is publicly accessible. So the iTunes or the software that is going to display that can actually retrieve it. So, how do we get listed on iTunes? We have everything ready right now. So, we should have these three things ready and place it on somewhere on the internet that is publicly accessible. We have the podcast episode or episodes if we have many, the MP3 files somewhere. We have the RSS feed that is actually picking up those MP3 files. And basically that means the MP3 files can be somewhere else than the RSS feed is, and in the different place than the actually web pages are, because the RSS feed actually tells where the MP3 files are. And of course, one episode can be on there and the other one on another server. Maybe you don't want to do that. It's easier to have them on the same place, but of course, when using RSS, it points to the right MP3 file. So it just have to be somewhere that is publicly accessible. And then you have the cover art, the JPEG or PNG image, large image. You can see briefly the Puhujan Kulma that I'm actually hosting and producing, showing right here. And then when we have these ready, we just launch the iTunes application. You need to have the iTunes application on the Windows machine or on Mac, and you have to log in. So you need the valid user account to iTunes. And then from the podcast quick links section, you have like I should have some image of that, but nevertheless, if you go in the podcast section on iTunes, I believe it's the little icons on here on the top, you get information on the right hand that has the Submit a Podcast link. Of course, whatever language you use, the Mac, it's your own language, but if you're using English version, it's Submit a Podcast. And then there's a guided step-by-step things where you need to tell iTunes where what is the location of the RSS feed, what is the location for cover art and stuff like that.